Tonight on The Big Story, the prosecution follows the money trail in the Vice President's confidential funds floated in today's trial, so-called payment of rewards and disbursements to people with unusual names. The NBI has summoned a sitting and a former congressman for allegedly plotting to put the executive secretary in a compromising position. Two economists think removing the power system loss is a bad idea, with one saying it could lead to blackouts if consumers do not bite the bullet. And Filipinos wait with bated breath as tennis phenom Alex Ayala tries to make history again. She faces the world number 3 at the DC Open after the match is suspended due to rain. Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon. We begin with an examiner from the Commission on Audit testifying in the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. The former COA auditor fleshed out documents that the prosecution believes points to improper use of confidential funds. Mobile journalist Daniel Dayaw with tonight's big story.
Former COA Auditor Roderick Wamil detailed spending of the Office of the Vice President based on liquidation documents the agency submitted for its 2022 confidential funds. This refers to 125 million pesos used by the OVP from December 21 to December 31, 2022, or in just 11 days. Wamil said the expenditure violated the permitted use of the budget, which came from the taxpayers' money. Wamil also said the OVP's fiscal and financial plan and accomplishment report failed to enumerate the confidential activities funded by the cash advance. This prevented state auditors from determining whether the spending fell within the purposes allowed by the government rules. Even in the revised accomplishment report, which the OVP submitted later on, Wamil said he found gaps. He discovered that some of the money were used for purposes not allowed under confidential funds. This include 40 million pesos for medical and food aid, as well as payment of incentives to informants without any supporting evidence that the operation or intelligence gathering had been successful.
Yung kanilang physical and financial plan ay hindi compliant dun sa requirements ng joint circular dahil hindi po in-indicate ng OVP yung kanilang specific confidential activities na paggagamitan nila ng kanilang cash advance.
Bakit hindi allowed ang medical expense?
Hindi po siya kasama dun sa enumeration ng item 4.8 at yung enumeration po na yon ay exclusive. Yun lang po yung allowable confidential expenses. Yung item B po, yung payment of reward, kasi aside from this accomplishment report, hindi po sila nag-submit noong any document evidencing the success of the information gathering or surveillance activities on account of the information given by the informer.
Based on the OVP's additional accomplishment report, the following were part of the 125 million pesos spent within 11 days in 2022. Payments for rewards in the form of various goods and medicines, as well as payments for purchase supplies, tables, chairs, desktop computers, and printers. The largest amount went to various goods, totaling about 34 million pesos. Of all these expenses, the OVP submitted only acknowledgement receipts without official receipts or invoices showing where the supplies were purchased.
Hindi ba confidential yan kung saan drugstore ka bumili?
Hindi naman po siguro confidential pag kung ang pagbibilhan mo ay mga drugstore. Kasi ang confidential po mismo ay yung paggagamitan, hindi yung pagbibilhan.
Yung hardware stores na pinagbilhan ng mga tables and chairs tsaka desktop, hindi ba confidential yung mga pangalan ng mga hardware stores na yan?
Hindi rin po necessarily na confidential yung pangalan ng hardwares dahil yun nga po, hindi naman confidential yung pinagbilan kundi yung paggagamitan ng kanilang pondo.
Wamil likewise testified that Sara Duterte was the only vice president and DepEd secretary who received confidential funds. Wamil also assigned to the COA Intelligence and Confidential Funds Audit Office, or ICFAO, for a decade from 2014 to 2024. He said he was responsible for the post-audit of the liquidation of secret budgets for various government agencies. But in his 10 years at the ICFAO, Wamil said Duterte was the only vice president and the only department secretary he audited. Wamil also confirmed that the signatures on the liquidation and disbursement vouchers was that of the VPs, which led to his conclusion that she was aware of the contents of the report. Meanwhile, the name of the controversial Mary Grace Piatos finally surfaced at the Senate Impeachment Court. Wamel testified that Piatos received 70,000 pesos from the confidential funds of the OVP and used the money used for medicine, though it is not clear whether the disbursement was in kind or in cash. The prosecution also revealed of another Piatos receiving confidential funds. A receipt was made out to a certain Renan Piatos, but unlike Mary Grace, this recipient only had a single T in his surname. This certain Renan got 100,000 pesos, allegedly for the purchase of information. And aside from the Piatoses, the prosecution presented more questionable names who received funds based on acknowledgement receipts provided by the OVP. There's Nova Santos, Miko Harina, Patty Ting, Andy Lim, and Alexandro Piquit, among others.
Andy C. Lim for 50,000 pesos. Andy Lim. Kanya ko pala hindi mabasa. Andy Lim. Kung merong Andy Lim, siguro dahil
Objection,
pikit.
Your Honor. I'm sorry, but I've been giving leeway to opposing counsel, but I think she's been coloring, the contents of the documents more than what is shown
Your
in the
Honor, I'm
document
just reading. It
itself.
says here. And
No,
counsel
Your
can
Honor.
it says Andy Lim.
I think you
It's
know
the
my
way it
point, Your
sounds,
Honor.
Your Honor. It's like patiting. That's the way it's spelled. And the next one, maybe you will object again. It's Alejandro A. Piquit. I was gonna say, kanya siguro madali. May pikit ang mata. Pikit.
Exactly, Your Honor, our point, Your Honor.
Meantime, Duterte's defense team did not agree to stipulate that the OVP spent 125 million pesos in just 11 days. A stipulation refers to an agreement between opposing parties in a legal proceeding to accept certain facts as true without needing to prove them to save time in court. The defense did stipulate two other facts, though.
Yung 11 days kasi, may mga explanation yan, may maari tayong gawin na cross dyan. So, hindi pa muna tayo pumayag sa stipulation doon. But as to the other documents, such as yung mga sa COA, maliban sa acknowledgement receipts, of course, yung pagdating sa mga, naging AOM.
Kapatid Mobile Journal, Daniel Dayaw, we are One News.
Let's discuss today's proceedings with Father Ranhilio Aquino. Father Aquino is the Dean of San Beda University's Graduate School of Law. Welcome to the big story, Dean.
Good evening, Ces, and thank you for having me.
Well, let me start by asking if the irregularities that were pointed out in the testimony of the COA auditor today, such as the lack of specificity in the physical and financial plan, expenses that were not covered by use of confidential funds, late liquidation, like a year after, and the lack of receipts in acknowledgement receipts of those who received the money. Are these enough? Are these fatal flaws that would make you conclude that the Vice President betrayed the public trust? Or is it too early?
Well, Ces, please let's not forget that the prosecution is establishing conduct over a course of time, but the evidence presented today was damning enough to make payments to persons with ridiculously fictitious names. I find that particularly insulting, Says, because while that was probably meant to be humorous, the joke is on us as a nation. And notwithstanding the fact that these funds were confidential funds, that does not mean that they can be spent in any way the person who holds them wishes to hold them. There are purposes for which confidential funds may be spent. And when they are not spent in accordance with the purposes laid down by law, the person who was entrusted with these funds can and should be held accountable.
So this early, you're saying already there's indication.
More than indication says, I would think the evidence itself is damning enough. it points to culpability on the part of the vice president. I would like to point out that the vice president, I should say, is not indicted for specific crimes under the revised penal code. So unlike proceedings in regular courts of law where elements of specific crimes have to be established, here we're talking about general terms like betrayal of public trust, culpable violation of the Constitution, graft and corruption, and other high crimes. So what has so far been presented should be enough to the culpability of the vice president.
All right, so what does this indicate? Like, is it a cavalier attitude towards state funds? Is it hubris? What can we deduce how the VP, the office of the VP handles these funds?
Yes, in the column I had today in Manila Times says, I characterize this as effrontery, no, a mere shamelessness. Your term is right, cavalier attitude. Uh, she thought she could get away with it, and she thought that government auditors and those tasked with reviewing the expenditure of funds would be taken in by what she treated as a joke. And that is what makes me particularly incensed about this, because she was playing a joke on the whole nation. And this is really insulting to any citizen who is concerned about the way public funds are spent.
All right, the defense did not agree to the stipulation for the first tranche of 125 million was made toward the end of 2022, meaning the funds were just spent in 11 days. So
Yes.
for you, that is also of interest? Kasama rin
Of,
ba
of,
po
su-
yun sa damning?
of supreme interest, says, because if you spend that huge amount in 11 days, one wonders how much did you spend per day and what for? And we have a right to know, for all that amount that was spent, did we get anything in return? If it is claimed that this was used to purchase information, we would like to know, even at least in a general manner, what information, what did that information help us achieve? In the first place, as I cannot for the life of me understand why the Department of Education, which is not tasked with safeguarding national security, which is not tasked with intelligence gathering, should ask for confidential funds.
I agree with you, Dean. But may I point out, and I also ask this of guests who've come on the show, parang for me, the original sin is giving it out, which was approved by the President, Congress, the Senate. Why? Why are you giving this institution money? Why should they be the ones to gather intelligence? Aren't you putting people in the education sector in danger? Teachers, principals, or whoever these funds are supposed to be allocated to.
Okay, first of all, there is the political culture in this country. If I were the president, I would like to treat my vice president with respect, in the hope that she would deal respectfully with me as well. And part of that respect is trusting that she means well and that she intends to act honestly when she claims that her department needs intelligence funds. So even if the Department of Education is normally an agency that is not entrusted with the gathering of information, the president and other high officials tasked with formulating the budget decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Especially, let us not forget, she claimed that education had been infiltrated by leftists. And that is why she claimed she needed intelligence funds.
Okay. Now, for the defense, well, I suppose they just have to produce Mary Grace Piatos, Andy Lim, Patiting, the Mr. Mango and the Kamote. I'm sorry. It hurts to laugh, but that that's what they're supposed to do if they can do it.
Well, yes, and probably they will try to get some persons who will assume this is stupid names. But I think that the prosecution has done a good job at exposing the criminal and really shameless conduct that is involved here. May I just point out that the refusal of the defense to stipulate is an indication of uh, what they perceive to be a precarious situation they are in. Because something that is borne out very clearly by the record should be a matter of stipulation. But they refuse to stipulate on that. They know they are in troubled waters here. And they want the prosecution to prove everything that is alleged. And as far as I'm concerned and as far as I see it, and I think others will share the evaluation with me, Lorna Kapunan and her fellow House managers and prosecutors did a rather good job today, even if Lorna Kapunan had to be called out by the presiding officer for what PUA complained was making too much out of the names that were on that list.
Coloring is the term that he used.
Yes, but they are really in dark colors, says, and I think they deserved every derision they received this afternoon.
Well, their excuse is that there were several markings in the documents that they wanted to question. Even if, these documents came from them, actually.
And that's funny, says, because that's funny that they should say that, considering that they are supposed to be seasoned lawyers, because all this question about markings should have taken place at pretrial. The purpose precisely of pretrial is to facilitate the trial by seeing to it that all relevant evidence is pre-marked, so that there is reference simply to the marking that is given when the evidence is presented. So it's funny that defense should give that excuse now. But, well, let them have their way, and the prosecution will go on doing the fine job it has started to do so far.
Dean, one thing that the prosecution panel rules is the fact that they will have to present all the articles of impeachment before we hear the defense. It would have been better while it's fresh in our minds that they finished Article 4 and now they're on Article 1, that we hear the defense or we hear the respondent. What do you think? What do you think of that?
Yes,
the order?
I would have preferred that. I would have preferred that too. That one article is presented, argued, evidenced by the prosecution, and then answered by the defense. But there is also a public information dimension to that. By the time we reach the last article, it's possible that the public shall have forgotten what was presented by the prosecution for the first charge that was discussed.
Yun na nga
And that is not going to be helpful at all. See?
Now, you're saying, and I think you said earlier that the stance of the defense is really, the burden is on the prosecution. You have to prove your case. But Attorney Kapunan last week said here that that's why they seem to be that they have no defense. Actually, is what she said. Is she correct? That seems to be their stance. All the burden is on the prosecution, but actually in an impeachment court, that is not supposed to be the attitude.
First of all, I have insisted several times that an impeachment trial should not be likened to a criminal trial because it is not.
It is not.
And the rules that are applicable in criminal trials should not be made to apply in impeachment cases. The impeachment process is, number one, a process of political accounting. Political because it is politicians who sit in judgment, determining whether a high official of the land can be trusted with holding on to office and being re-elected or reappointed to high office. And second, it is also a process of public inquisition. The public has a right to know, which is why the proceedings have to be transparent to the people and should not become a lawyer's game because people should know what's happening. They should understand why evidence is accepted, why it is excluded. And given the nature of impeachment proceedings, I have always been averse to the application of the technical rules of procedure and evidence.
Okay. All right. Now, the prosecution has allotted, I think it's 31 or 32 days for this particular article of impeachment. But with your view that there's already damning evidence, can this now be shortened? The presentation of evidence on this particular article can be lessened to hasten the proceedings.
If we learn the example from the first charge, which was a threat on the life of the president and the first lady, the prosecution has the good sense to know when it has presented enough, and then it declines to produce further evidence. So they might just do that again here. And if they do that here, that will be a clear signal that they are rather satisfied that they've made their case. But let's not forget, says, that after the defense shall have presented its defense, the prosecution will be entitled to present rebuttal evidence.
I see. So, parang recross. Parang gano'n.
Yes, yes.
Now, Dean, in communicating to the people, because the proceedings are lengthy, tedious, is the prosecution doing a good job in explaining? I mean, they hold regular press conferences, but are they doing a good job in communicating what they're doing in the court to the people who don't have the time to sit through hours and hours of hearings?
Yes, I think they are, but they could still do a better job. You remember, says, that very early on, they appointed a party list representative, Congresswoman Reni Ko, who is a youth representative, but also a lawyer.
Yes.
I would have wanted to speak more because she can come across to the youth and the youth can connect with her. And being a lawyer, she would be able to give the correct legal explanations.
Iba yung lengguwahe ng kabataan kasi.
Tama, tama. At
Di ba
ang takot ko
naiintindihan
lang,
nyo ba yung mga linggo nila? Minsan hindi, di ba?
no more. No more. I belong to a bygone era, says.
Pareho po
Yeah.
tayo. Well, we can liken it to sa opisina. Pag lumalabas ka, di ba, you have to liquidate. Eh kung hindi ka nag-present ng resibo, di ba, tama yun sa'yo. I think ganun kasimple lang yun eh.
You know, says, they always say that all of these requirements do not apply because these are confidential funds. And it is in the nature of confidential funds that you do not disclose to whom payments are made because these are informants. But the fact that they are confidential funds does not strip them of the character of being public funds for which you must give an accounting. And while you may not make public exactly who the recipients were or who the informants are, for fear that you may have no informants in the future, you should nevertheless make a clean, transparent, clear accounting to the agencies of government tasked with demanding an accounting of you.
Plus, there's a joint resolution that covers that and says that you have to.
Yes, there is, in fact. And I checked that last night with COA, yes.
I think way back 2015. So there's the
Correct.
perception that intelligence and confidential funds are beyond the reach of scrutiny or audit.
That is wrong. To allow that to persist would be to continue to allow people to fool around with funds under the pretext that they are confidential funds. And that is simply unacceptable.
Well, we thank you so much for your insights tonight. Father Ranhilio Aquino, Dean of San Beda University's Graduate School of Law. Marami pong salamat. You're watching The Big Story on One News. When we return, the NBI has asked Congressman Leandro Leviste and former Congressman Jing Paras to explain their alleged involvement in a so-called honey trap plot against the executive secretary. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Big Story. The National Bureau of Investigation has issued subpoenas for Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste and former Congressman Jing Paras. This is in connection with a supposed honey trap scheme against Executive Secretary Ralph Recto. Leviste and Paras were implicated following an entrapment operation of a talent manager allegedly hooking up 5 women with politicians. The talent manager claimed they were hired to frame Recto for trafficking and drug charges. In return, each woman will be paid 1 million pesos, with another 1 million going to the talent manager. The person who allegedly financed the plan is Leviste. Paras and Leviste have until Thursday to respond to the subpoena and appear before the agency. They have since denied the accusation. Meanwhile, Recto's camp is also cooperating with the NBI to determine more information about this alleged plot. The NBI clarified that at this point, they still consider Leviste and Paras innocent.
We have to establish kung ano yung time frame. That's why we are subpoenaing the persons mentioned by the personalities na nahuli natin. I have to remind the public and everyone that si former Congressman Jing Paras and si Congressman Leandro Leviste were mentioned by the persons na nahuli natin. So as of now, as we speak, they're considered na wala pa talaga, no, na sasabihin may kasalanan.
Former Congressman Paras has disputed screenshots recovered from the talent manager's phone, saying these are not sufficient evidence. Paras has expressed interest to cooperate with the NBI's investigation. Leviste, for his part, posted on social media a screenshot of a past message sent to him by NBI Director Matibag. He said Matibag is a friend of their family. Leviste also considers the NBI Director a political mentor. The neophyte lawmaker claims Matibag is only following orders, so he has forgiven him and called allegations against him, quote, a recto production. Now let's get more updates on this issue from attorney Melvin Matibag, NBI Director. Welcome back to The Big Story, Director.
Magandang gabi po, Ma'am Ses. Magandang gabi po sa lahat ng nanonood sa inyo. Kamusta po?
Director, unang-una itong
Opo.
new post ni Congressman Leviste, sinasabing recto production daw ito at pinatawad na daw kayo. Kasi
Well,
idinadawit kayo sa parang fake, I guess, is what he means.
Well, malinaw naman po yung statement ko. Sinasabi ko nga, hindi naman immediately naniniwala ang NBI na sila'y akusado, sila'y may kasalanan. Kaya nga po natin sila'y pinapatawag para sila po magbigay linaw dahil pinangalanan po sila. Una-una po, sabi ko pati, with regards to Congressman Libiste, hearsay yung kwento nung pong talent manager tsaka po nung babae. Pero yung pong kay Congressman Jing Paras, direct testimony, corroborated po yun. So ngayon, kailangan po nating tanungin si Congressman Paras, totoo ba na sinabi mo rito sa mga tao na ito na ang magbabayad sa kanila ay si Congressman Libiste? At kayo ba talaga nag-usap? And of course, there are other evidence po na tinitingnan tayo. May po tayong testimonial evidence, meron po tayong mga ebidensya na tinatawag na documentary evidence, natin po titingnan. Ngayon, instead na sinasabi po ni Congressman Libiste na recto production, mas maganda po, dumalong nga siya at magpaliwanag po. At linaw, mahirap na po pagka social media lang nagsasabi ng mga ganyan eh.
Opo.
Siyempre po, meron ka mga follower, meron din mga kanya-kanya pong opinion. Ang sa akin naman po dito, napakasimple lang naman eh. Una, tanungin lang si Congressman Paras, totoo bang kilala mo o hindi itong mga taong to? Totoo ba nag-usap kayo? Totoo ba na ito yung pinag-usapan ninyo? So yun po yung kailangan. So madali naman po talagang tumanggi, pero when you're confronted with the questions and the evidence, doon naman po lalabas. At kami naman po sa NBA palagi, kung ano po yung ebidensya na naaayon sa proseso at sa batas, yun naman po yung susundin namin. Wala naman po akong binibitawan niya na ng NBI na wala kaming pinagbabasihan. Kaya naman po very careful, sinabi ko, yung publiko, wag nating husgahan muna si Congressman Paras at si Congressman Libiste at hintayin po natin na sila magpaliwanag. Pero mahirap po kung sa social media nagpapaliwanag dahil
Opo.
hindi po lalo makakatulong.
Paano po ang nangyari dito, Director Matibag? Parang natisod nyo lang, you were actually arresting these individuals on a different, I mean, not really connected to
Tama po.
Paano, paki-explica po, paano?
Napakahirap naman po na production to. No? Wala naman sigurong papayag po na tao na makukulong pa ng no bail for qualified human trafficking, hindi po ba? Kahit siguro anong halaga, hindi mo ipagpapalit yung kalayaan mo. So hindi po mahirap yun. So ganito po nangyari dyan, nasa radar na po namin tong individual na to, sinusundan namin, until finally nagkaroon po ng pagkakasal ng entrapment. And doon po sa entrapment na yon, doon po lumabas, nung nahuli na siya na that voluntary biglang nagsalita itong talent manager, sinabi na, ba't nyo ba talaga kami inuhuli? May kinalaman ba ito sa pinapatrabaho sa amin? Si Senator Ralph Rector. Senator pa nga po ang tawag eh. Hindi secretary. Hindi executive secretary. So nung lumabas na po yung gano'n na item na usapin, tinawagan po ako nung nag-iimbestiga. Sabi ko, teka, alamin nyo na yan kung ano yung sinasabi niya. Sinundan na po. At nagsalita na rin po yung isang babae doon sa 5, nagkataon, yung alias Jen po, ang tawag. Nagkwento na. At nagtutugma po. Magkahiwalay po na nag-statement siya na hindi po magkasama. Nagtutugma. At yun din po yung sinusundan namin. Nagulat kami, may post po si Congressman Libiste, sinasabi niya yung Rockwell, yun din po yung script na binibigay sa kanila. Ayon dun sa aming iniimbestigahan. Hindi pa po lumalabas yung statement ng babae na yan, ha? Nauna na po yung post na Rockwell.
Ayun.
So, there are instances na kailangan po namin imbestigahan para magbigay linaw. And let me be very clear po, Ma'am Ses. Kung mapatunayan namin nagsisinungaling po itong tao na ito, hindi lamang sa human trafficking namin sa pananagutin, kundi tutulungan po natin si Congressman Paras at si Congressman Libiste na dapat managot po sila.
Paano po
Bakit
kung
po
hindi
sila
sila sumipot sa sabina?
sabi po nila, makikipagtulungan sila. The only way na makapagbigay linaw ka is sumarap ka doon sa proseso. Sabi nila, magsasalita sa tamang panahon, sa tamang proseso. Ito na po yung pagkakataon na magsalita at tumarap po sa proseso.
So ibig
sana
sabihin
dumalo
po,
sila.
yung post ni Congressman Leviste, medyo kaduda-duda yung nakaraang linggo na sinasabing parang may sinasuggest siyang madadawit sa isang malaking skandalo, di ba?
Eksakto po. Yung po yung tinitingnan namin mga anggulo. Kasama po yan. Meron po kami kasing mga consistent na batayan na ginagawa namin yung standard. May 17, may post na ng Rockwell. Ang sabi po nung tumitistigo ngayon, May 26 siya tinext ni Kung Jim Paras at nakita nga po namin yung text exchange. Nag-meeting po ng July 11, 15 at 26. So meron pong series, may pattern po tayo tinitingnan. And again, I'll go back to sa statement na napakahirap naman po na production to. Magpapakulong ng yung isang tao, masasakdan ng qualified human trafficking na dahil gusto lang gawa ng kwento. Wala naman po siguro papayag din ng gano'n. At
Pero
hindi po namin gawain sa NBI yan.
Opo, pero yung post naman ni Congressman Leviste na kayo ay isang political mentor niya, parang naglalambing sa inyo na go easy on him.
Well, no one is above the law, Ma'am Ses. Nilagay po ako rito with the mandate na kailangan law and order ilabas natin. Kung saan yung ebidensya, doon tayo. Truth and justice, dapat doon tayo. Kung ano po yung proseso. Saka, mabuti po na sinabi niya yon, pero I don't see any connection yung previous na text ko sa kanya. And maganda nga po nilabas niya na ibig sabihin, kami magkakilala, magkaibigan, ibig sabihin, it also validates yung mga past actions ko na hindi ko tinitingnan yung relasyon at political lining natin, kundi ang titingnan natin kung ano yung direksyon ng batas, kung ano yung direksyon ng proseso, at kung ito'y naaayon sa ebidensya. Ganun lang po tayo, Ma'am Ses. Yun lang po yung sinusunod po natin dito.
Ang kampo po ni Congressman Paras is saying na yung kung screenshots lang ang ebidensyang hawak nyo, hindi daw yun sapat.
Well, sabi po niya yun, siguro, di harapin po na, pakita natin yung screenshot, pero may forensic po yung mga telepono . So, tsaka, yun pa lang po yung nakikita nilang ebidensya. So, kailangan nilang humarap para i-confront namin sila kung sa iba pa naming ebidensya ang hawak-hawak po. So, ano po bang ebidensya ang sinasabi niya? Papakita po natin.
Okay. Ngayon naman, is it necessary for Executive Secretary Ralph Recto to be summoned to shed light on this matter?
Teka po muna, ano po bang kinalaman ni Secretary Recto? Siya nga po yung gustong biktimahin. So kung gusto po niyang voluntaryong pumunta at magbibigay ng reklamo, okay po yun. Ngayon, mag-iiba po yung dynamics dyan. If he's already being accused na meron siyang kinalaman o ginagawa. Pero dito po sa sitwasyon na to, malinaw naman siya yung gustong biktimahin. Yung character assassination nga po yung term na ginamit . So, ganun po yun. So, it so happen, may political dynamics po tayo nakikita, pero it's a very simple na nangyari. Kung titingnan natin, there is an operation na totally hindi kasama itong pangyayari na to, meron palang bigger issue doon sa mga taong ating nahuli na kailangan din po natin imbestigahan.
Okay, Director, kung mamarapatin niyo po, ibang topic naman, the flood control probe. We
Sige
understand the NBI is preparing 30? Tama po ba yung numero? 30 additional cases?
Meron pa pong 27 na naiwan sa amin na amin pong tatapusin. Bukod puro sa mga nauna po nating naisampa na po.
Ano pong specifics nun? May you share with us?
I don't have the details po, Ma'am Ses, pero iba-iba pong probinsya. Meron po, ang nare-recall ko recently kasing na-encounter ko is yung dalawa po doon sa Cebu. I can't remember the district. Tapos meron po isa sa Quezon at one in sa Bulacan po yata. So, I have to review pa po yung iba. Opo.
Opo, Director.
Pero, opo, yes, ma'am.
Yun namang sa SEA Games anomaly, ano po ang update doon?
Meron na po mga nag-statements na dati mga official po ng PSC at saka ng POC, voluntarily po, at nagbigay din po ng mga dokumento. Hindi po nag-appear yung mga member ng board ng Peace Corps at pinadala ulit namin po sila ng Sampina, nagpadala po sila ng abogado. Pero we have sufficient documents po to show na meron talaga kaming sinusundan po na investigasyon at tamang direksyon po.
Yung pong nagbigay sa inyo ng mga statements, meron namang additional information that will shed light on the
Yes,
case.
meron po. Napaka-importante po na mga binigay na information po sa amin. Opo.
And si Senador Alan Peter Cayetano po, hindi naman ninyo sinamon because he's not mentioned nga no, in the board?
Eh, hindi po naman po siya na-mention kahit kailan noon eh. Nagkataon, he is acting as the chairman, introducing as the chairman, pero wala po siya dun sa board. Pero eventually po, pagka na-establish natin na mas malinaw, I think mismo po siya should make an explanation, at least to the public, bakit ka o back to chairman na hindi ka naman pala member ng board. Because you cannot be a chairman of a foundation without you being a member of the board.
All right, we thank you for talking to us. Despite your busy
Salamat po.
schedule, NBI Director Melvin
you.
Matibag, marami pong salamat. Now in other news, Malacanang is backing Defense Secretary Gilbert Chodoro after his remarks against pro-China politicians drew the ire of Davao City Congressman Pulong Duterte. Chodoro has called on officials who side with China over the West Philippine Sea dispute to consider resigning. That earned the ire of Duterte, who told Chodoro in a Facebook post to, quote, stop demonizing China. Congressman Pulong also admonished the defense chief for imposing loyalty tests on public officials. But for Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, Chodoro is just putting the country's interest first.
Ang pinag-uusapan po natin dito ay mga Pilipino. Pilipino na ang dapat ang puso ay para sa Pilipinas lamang. Kung kay Congressman Pulong Duterte ay pinag-uusapan ang loyalty ng Pilipinas, or rather ng mga Pilipino sa Pilipinas, lubhang katakataka. Very alarming para sa isang katulad niya na mambabatas.
Meantime, Malacanang denies President Marcos had a hand in the temporary release of former Senator Bong Revilla. Revilla is facing charges of malversation through falsification of public documents over the flood control scandal. In his radio program over the weekend, Ombudsman Boying Remulla said his office had expected Revilla's temporary release. That's because someone allegedly worked to grant the former senator's bail petition.
Kung yan lang din po ang iisipin ng mga kababayan natin, na bakit siya pa ang unang na nabigyan ng temporary liberty, kung yan talaga ay may katotohanan, at sasabihin natin may kamay ang Pangulo dito, hindi ba dapat hindi na lang siya sinampahan ng kaso? Pero siya yung nauna sinampahan ng kaso. So walang logic. Kung may kakulangan, hindi pa po dito nagtatapos. Dahil petition for bail pa lang po ito. Maaaring nagkaroon ng edge, pero ayon naman sa Office of the Ombudsman, ay may matibay silang mga ebidensya. So, hayaan na lang po natin ang state prosecutors na gampanan ang kanilang trabaho.
Meantime, the palace is ready to investigate gambling allegations against newly appointed Health Secretary Brix Pujalte. A group of concerned citizens anonymously filed a complaint before the Presidential Complaints Center. Pujalte has said he visited a casino on July 20 just to meet with Masbate and Sorsogon health officials.
Kung may ganito po mga issue ay dapat lang po talagang lumabas. Kailangan po maimbestigahan at kung ano man po ang kalalabasan nito ay hahayaan po natin ang Pangulo na mag-desisyon patungkol dyan.
Here now are the other stories making headlines this Monday from mobile journalist Merimon Reyes.
The Sandigan Bayan 2nd Division has denied the prosecution's request to remove former Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan as an accused in a graft case linked to the flood control scam. The prosecution earlier sought to exclude Bonoan so he could serve as a state witness. But according to the anti-graft court, this could be seen as a violation of the right of Bonoan's co-accused for fair trial. The case information indicates the ex-DPWH chief colluded with Senator Jinggoy Estrada to pocket kickbacks from infrastructure projects. Nevertheless, the Sandigan Bayan says the prosecution can still pursue its request at the appropriate stage of the proceedings or if it's proven that Bonoan is the least guilty in the case. Meantime, the anti-graft court entered a not guilty plea for Senator Rodante Marcoleta. That's after he refused to enter one for the charge of violating Presidential Decree number 46. PD 46 prohibits public officials from receiving gifts. Marcoleta's lawyer invoked a pending petition before the Supreme Court challenging the Ombudsman's resolution in the case. The senator's co-accused Aristotel Viray pled not guilty to the same charge. Marcoleta's pretrial is set for August 10. CCTV footage has been released on the killing of Alicia Lipata, also known as Mima Alicia. The political vlogger was murdered in a subdivision in Caloocan City on July 17. On that day at past 1:40 in the morning, two suspects were spotted eating in a lugawan and were seen in a different church by 2:30 a.m. They were later shown riding a motorcycle, and gunshots were heard not long after. 6 suspects had already been identified in Lipata's shooting, with 3 still at large. The PNP has ruled out politics in the vlogger's killing and said the case involved hired killers.
Iyon po ang lumalabas sa investigation natin, na mayroong personal na pagkakautang itong grupo nila ni Mima at saka itong suspect natin, itong mastermind. Meron kasi silang mga business engagement, kaya itong ang possible motive talaga ay personal. Doon na lang po muna tayo sa sa usapin na kung saan ay ang motive po ay personal, na si Mima as pronounced by our Chief PNP ay may pagkakautang, So doon po muna tayo until such time na makuha po natin yung mastermind, kasi I believe kailangan talaga po nating makuha yung pinaka-mastermind. At from there on ay masasagot po natin lahat ng katanungan po ng media.
A grade 9 student was charged with murder for stabbing to death his classmate in Las Piñas. The child in conflict with the law, or CICL, is now under the custody of a Bahay Pag-asa in Quezon City. The CICL allegedly got upset when the victim forgot a 10 peso change from drinking water he brought in the school canteen. And labor groups stormed the Pasig Hall of Justice on Monday to condemn the temporary restraining order on the implementation of the 85 peso minimum wage hike in Metro Manila. Some lawmakers were also spotted in the rally, such as Senator Robin Padilla, Akbayan Party List Representative Percy Sandanya, and Kamanggagawa Party List Representative Eli San Fernando. Meantime, in Manila, there was also a lighting rally at the office of the Department of Labor and Employment. Acting DOLE Secretary Francis Tolentino had this explanation to protesters.
Hindi ako pwedeng lumabag sa saligang batas. Kung mali ang husgado rito, dapat sila yung magpaliwanag. Hindi ako parang magsalita sa husgado dahil sila yung naglabas ng order. Di ba?
The Pasig RTC TRO is effective until August 13. The Office of the Solicitor General has since insisted that a local court has no jurisdiction over wage hike orders. Kapatid Mobile journalist Mary Mon Reyes, we are One News.
Meantime, fuel prices will slightly drop tomorrow, giving motorists a reprieve after 4 straight weeks of hikes. The Department of Energy has ordered a minimum rollback of 60 centavos per liter for diesel, 73 centavos for gasoline, and 2 pesos for kerosene. But transport groups that rallied in front of the LTFRB today are not satisfied with the rollback. They say drivers have become so burdened by the huge spike in pump prices. The protests come as the LTFRB begins hearing petitions on fare hikes. The board will ask the Transportation Department for an interim fare hike while the hearings continue. The agency will also recommend to Malacanang the raising of fuel subsidies to 20 pesos per liter from the current 10 pesos. To make the subsidies substantial, or sustainable rather, the DOTR needs an additional 4.5 billion pesos. The budget for the current subsidy program is good only until August 15. This is a big story on One News. 2 economists are warning of the cost of scrapping the system loss charge, with one predicting blackouts. The details when we return.
Yung kanilang physical and financial plan ay hindi compliant dun sa requirements ng joint circular dahil hindi po in-indicate ng OPP yung kanilang specific confidential activities na paggagabitan nila ng kanilang cash advance.
Andy C. Lim for 50,000 pesos. Andy Lim. Kanya ko pala hindi mabasa. Andy Lim.
I'm sorry, but I've been giving leeway to opposing counsel, but I think she's been coloring, the contents of the documents more than what is shown
Your
in the
Honor, I'm
documents
just reading. It
itself.
says here. And
No,
counsel
Your Honor.
can it says Andy Lim.
I think you
It's the
know my
way it
point, Your
sounds, Your
Honor.
Honor. It's like patiting. That's the way it's spelled. And the next one, maybe you will object again. It's Alejandro A. Pikit. I was gonna say, kanya siguro madali. May pikit ang mata. Pikit.
Exactly, Your Honor, our point, Your Honor.
You're still watching the big story. Tropical Depression Luis is still over the vicinity of Isabela after it made landfall this afternoon. As of 8 p.m., Luis is over the town of Maconacon, but its movement has slightly accelerated west-northwestward at 20 kilometers per hour. Wind signal number 1 is up over the central and eastern portions of Cagayan, including the Babuyan Islands, as well as in Isabela, the eastern and southern portions of Apayao, and the eastern portions of Kalinga, Mountain Province, and Ifugao. Most of Luzon and Visayas, as well as select provinces in Barm and in the Davao region, are forecast to experience strong to gale force gusts tonight until tomorrow. By Wednesday, Pagasa forecasts Luis to weaken into a remnant low, then be in the circulation of another cyclone. This storm is already of typhoon strength, but still outside the Philippine area of responsibility. There's a slim chance of the typhoon with international name Dolphin entering PAR. If it does, it will be called Mia. In other news, Meralco says it will comply with the Energy Regulatory Commission's directive to implement a 9.5 billion peso refund to customers over a 6-month period. In a statement, Meralco Senior Vice President and Regulatory Management Head Jose Ronald Valles said the company supports government efforts to provide relief to consumers and ensure that they benefit from approved refunds in a timely and transparent manner. He added the refund will appear as a separate line item in electricity bills, allowing customers to see the amount being returned. Residential customers are expected to receive a refund of about 58 centavos per kilowatt hour, or around 117 pesos for a household using 200 kilowatt hours a month. Meantime, economist Alex Escucha said eliminating all system loss charges, including the value-added tax, would be a, quote, bad idea. Another economist, Nonoy Opla, said the focus should be on reducing system losses rather than eliminating the charge.
And to be fair to the president, he did not say remove. He just demanded the review of the ITIRA law, which is the correct statement to make. It's a bad idea to simply say remove all system loss charges.
We will have nationwide blackout.
Oh.
Yeah, nationwide blackout because you need the both private distribution utilities and electric company need continued capitalization in order to improve the facilities. That's why it's very dangerous to remove the system loss. Yeah, I think we really have to bite the bullet kasi di ba tinanggap naman natin nagmahal yung diesel, nagmahal yung gasolina, nagmahal yung LPG. Pagtanggalin lang natin yung mga sloganery and emotionalism, I think people will realize that. Kasi wala naman talaga the problem is really external. Nagbubumbahan sa Middle East, yeah, the source of oil, gas, and all the partly the price of coal is also affected because many power plants in the West are shifting back to coal. So energy prices are really rising. So I think the people will really have to adjust and bite the bullet. Kasi nga ang problema talaga dito is blackout. Kasabihan nga, the most expensive electricity is no electricity, blackout.
And finally, for our big picture tonight, It's history on hold in Washington, D.C. That's as extreme weather suspended the Mubadala DC Open Final between Filipina Bet Alex Ayala and world number 3 Jessica Pegula. Pegula took the opening set 6-4, but Ayala made a strong start in the second and was leading 2-1 when play was halted due to rain. The match resumes at midnight. That's about 3 hours from now. Catch it on Premier Sports 2, Signal Channel 273 HD. It's also streaming on Signal Play. For this championship, Ayala stands to move up the ranks. But pending completion of the Mubadala DC Open, she officially stays as world number 28. And those are the big stories this first Monday of August. I'm Ces Orenia Drilon. Kapatid, we are One News, your side all the time. Good night.